Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So here recently, we've been hearing some rumblings about some different Xbox studios, and today, that continues on with the Coalition. The Coalition is one of Xbox's most talented studios, especially in regards to Unreal Engine. And we're now hearing about what they're working on next, and also what happened with some of their secret projects that we previously heard about, or in this case, what didn't happen. Yeah, this update might have some fans just a little mixed, but we're going to get into that today. Also, yesterday, we talked about a Nintendo Direct happening next week on February 7th. This leak seemingly caused a lot of confusion online, as it wasn't necessarily as guaranteed as some were maybe hoping it was. But, well, that original rumor might not have necessarily been so far off after all, at least according to what we're hearing currently. So definitely stay tuned for all of that. But without a further ado, let's just gonna jump right into the news, starting off with PlayStation. Now, we actually have a couple PlayStation stories here because they just hit some rather impressive milestones. On one side, the PlayStation 5 continues to put up some pretty incredible numbers. They did post their Q3 financial report, which revealed the PlayStation 5 shipped a whopping 7.1 million units in the quarter, which brings the grand total up to 32 million units worldwide. Now, technically, this is behind the PlayStation 4 in the same time frame, as the PlayStation 4 had sold 37 million units in this point of its life cycle, but 32 million is still impressive, and also Sony does expect to close that gap throughout 2023. You have to keep in mind that the PlayStation 5 has been impacted by stock shortages since day one. This really has been an extremely difficult generation in terms of stock versus demand. According to Sony, though, that will change in 2023. The PlayStation 5 will be more readily available this year, thankfully, and they do expect to sell 6.2 million units in the first 3 months of the calendar year. Now, that seems like an awfully ambitious target, and just to kind of put that into perspective here, the PlayStation 4 sold 3 million units in the same part of its life cycle. So again, Sony fully expects to close the gap in 2023. Regardless, though, I mean, 32 million units sold this early in the generation despite all the logistic issues. Yeah, that's pretty incredible, to say the least. Big congrats to Sony here. Now, also, congrats to Sony Santa Monica, as they officially announced that God of War Ragnarok has already eclipsed 11 million units sold across the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. I mean, that's kind of the thing here, though. This is a console exclusive that we're talking about. It's already difficult enough for multi-platform games to put up these type of numbers, let alone this fast. In all honesty, though, I mean, if there's any game at all that deserves this type of success, it's God of War Ragnarok. It really is one of the best single-player, story-driven games probably ever made. So this is very much deserved, and I'm 100% positive that this is not the only big milestone that we're going to hear about for God of War Ragnarok. This is a game that will absolutely sell throughout the entirety of the PlayStation 5's life cycle because it is that good. When somebody buys a PlayStation 5, yeah, there's a good chance that God of War Ragnarok will be one of their first purchases. Now, we also got a small update for one of my most anticipated games, being Alan Wake 2. Unfortunately, we still don't have a gameplay reveal or anything like that, crossing my fingers that will happen soon. But in the meantime, in an interview with Games Radar, Remedy did tease a shift in tone for the sequel. Whereas the original Alan Wake was more of an action game with some horror elements thrown in, it instead sounds like the sequel is going to be a true survival horror game. They're not saying too much about this just yet, but they did note this: we are not quite ready to reveal too much about our approach to survival horror just yet. What I will say is that we very much want to put a stake in the ground and say we are creating Remedy's take on the survival horror genre. Gameplay, narrative, atmosphere, music, it's all singing from the same hymn sheet, and that was very important for us from the outset. So from the sounds of it here, it absolutely seems like they're going to go full into the horror elements this time around. And I personally think that that's exciting. We have seen a bit of a renaissance for the horror genre in the last few years, and I think as talented as Remedy is, and also as unique as the Alan Wake universe is, I mean, they could really play into the light and dark aspects of the game. They could also play into some of the psychological elements, and I mean, they could really truly leave their mark here. And actually, about that, they did also say that Alan Wake 2 is their biggest project yet, and through the years, it's grown more ambitious and more unique. So everything is sounding pretty good on paper, and now we're just kind of waiting for that official reveal. Again, hopefully that will be sometime soon. Okay, so let's just go and talk about what's happening over at Xbox, though, and I feel like this is kind of a strange situation. I'll explain why here in just a second, but first, what's happening here is that the often leaky Jeff Grubb leaked what the Coalition is working on next, and also what they're not working on. Over the last year or so, as some of you all may know, there have been some rumblings that the Coalition might be working on some secret projects beyond just Gears of War. There was actually even some job listings that kind of signified this, but however, that may no longer be the case, as Jeff Grubb said this on the Game Mess Mornings show. They have canceled that smaller project, as well as another project, so there have been 2 games canceled there. The studio is now going to fully move on to Gears 6. I say now, but it is likely moved on to Gears 6 in full in the course of the last year. Okay, so there's multiple things happening here. First is the smaller project that he claims has been canceled. The reason that this happened is because he said that they were developing a smaller game to experiment with in Unreal Engine 5. However, after the Matrix demo, Jeff Grubb said that they felt that they were up to speed, and that's why they canceled the smaller project. Now, I'm not sure about this other unannounced game that he mentions, though. He didn't really go into detail as to what happened here, what scope it was, or anything like that. And this is where I'd say the story is a little bit more on a strange side of things. This was an unannounced game for a reason. See, a lot of consumers probably don't actually realize this, but studios are often incubating different projects. They toy around with different ideas, and if they feel like it can amount to anything, then they'll just kind of push forward with it. However, a lot of projects just never fully gets off the ground, which is why studios don't announce them in the first place. If you talk to developers, a lot of them will tell you, you'd be surprised by how many projects just never come to be for this reason or that reason. And that's where a leak like this is probably frustrating for studios. We as fans are just getting a small snip of what is actually happening. We are just getting some very small details, and then it just kind of blows up online without any further context. Imaginations, more or less, they just go wild in these situations. So, I mean, when it comes to this unannounced game, I mean, it's hard to say exactly what it is. It could have just been an incubation game, or maybe it was something more. I mean, we just don't currently know. However, what we can absolutely take away from this leak, though, is that the Coalition is likely fully focused on Gear 6 now, and from the sounds of it, they're not working on a new IP alongside it as previously rumored. Now, I will say that part is unfortunate for a lot of fans, just because the Coalition is extremely talented, and I know a lot of us wanted to see what they can do outside of just the Gears universe. I feel like, especially when it comes to something like Xbox Game Pass, I'd personally like to see every single Xbox studio have at least one small project in development. But it sounds like in this case, they tried, and whatever they were working on before, it just didn't come to fruition. Again, who knows how long that game was in development, but there you have it. As for them working on Gears, that's not really a major surprise. We all pretty much expected that anyways, especially with how its story ended in Gears 5, but as some of you may know, Gears is one of my favorite franchises ever made. Now, I'm not necessarily as attached to some of the new characters as what I was in the original trilogy, but I mean, I'm still a massive fan of Gears. I love the gameplay. There's nothing else that feels quite like it. And yeah, I'm excited to see the next Gears game utilize Unreal Engine 5 and the power of the Xbox Series X. I mean, we've already seen what the Coalition can do with the Matrix demo. I'm ready to see a full game come from them. I mean, the Coalition, they are technical geniuses when it comes to Unreal Engine, so this could be a real visual showcase and a prime example of what Unreal Engine 5 can do when it eventually releases. However, it sounds like we're still a few years away. I definitely would not expect this to be an imminent release, but let me know what you all think about this entire leak, and are you disappointed in the lack of a new IP alongside Gears, even if it was a smaller project? Now, as for the much speculated February Nintendo Direct, it is now rumored that it will take place sometime next week. Of course, yesterday we talked about the possibility of it being on February 7th, and while there's currently some skepticism over this, Jeff Grubb is now claiming that he also has been hearing that it will indeed be next week. Now, he's not saying that it will be on February 7th per se, but he did say this: everything I'm hearing, and it's all just sort of reiterating it, it continues to be the week of February 6th. Over and over and over again, every little detail I get is basically a week from now we should begin hearing about all this stuff. I think it's probably late in the week, so if February 6th is going to come around and we're not going to hear about it, and people are going to freak out like there's nothing happening, first of all, I'm not guaranteeing it for that week. I'm just saying that's what everything is sort of pointing to right now. So he actually does have a legitimate point here. I mean, yes, he's saying he's heard it will be next week, but even if you want to disregard what he's hearing, there's still some other evidence out there that kind of points to some type of imminent Nintendo Direct. Just over the last few weeks, Nintendo updated both Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Advance Wars Reboot Camp on the Nintendo eShop. That does signify that they're preparing for pre-orders. On top of that, I mean, at the very least, it definitely seems like something's happening with Advance Wars, as there's a lot of smoke behind an official release date announcement. Not only has several listings suddenly reemerged on big websites like Walmart, Best Buy, etc., but now there's also a person claiming that they work for Walmart, and they got shipments in, which includes 3 promotional cardboard cutouts. One is for Minecraft Legends, the other is for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and then the last one is for Advance Wars Reboot Camp, which says quote-unquote available now. The supposed employee claims that they are supposed to put it up on February 10th. Now, to be fair, this is just a rumor. Who knows if this person is even telling the truth, but nonetheless, a lot of different things do seemingly point to a Nintendo Direct happening at some point next week. If anything, I guess we'll see soon enough. On to our final topic of the day, though. The Disgaea series is set to return with the 7th entry in the franchise. This is actually a pretty quick turnaround considering Disgaea 6 released just 2 years ago in 2021, but here we are in 2023, and Disgaea 7 is coming over to PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC this fall. They are keeping that 3D art style once again, though this time it will be telling the story of a lazy samurai and a Bushido fangirl as they try to fight against the tyrannical regime governing the demonic realm of Hinomoto. Now, these are relatively niche games, so if you haven't played them before, they're actually pretty good SRPGs. I would recommend trying the series out if you like anime style of games or SRPGs. I personally enjoy them myself, and after 7 didn't seemingly set the world on fire, just knowing that a 7th entry is on the way, I think is great news. Nonetheless, though, definitely do keep an eye out for Disgaea 7, which again is now set for a fall release. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, and with EA Motive showing interest in doing more with the Dead Space IP, I wanted to ask you all, which direction would you like to see Dead Space take next? And as you can see here, most of you all actually do want to see them continue on with the remakes. 47% of you all voted for Dead Space 2 Remake, 31% of you voted for Dead Space 4, and then only 14% of you voted for Dead Space 2 Reboot with big changes. So yeah, there does seem to be somewhat of a split here between Dead Space 2 Remake and then Dead Space 4. But considering Dead Space 2 is a good game, I can see why so many fans would like to see it get remade as well. Yes, Dead Space 2 has a little bit more action in it, and I know a lot of fans do prefer the first game because of that, but it's still a good game at the end of the day. Plus, EA Motive did a phenomenal job remaking the first game and actually even improved it in several ways. So we could see something similar with Dead Space 2. Maybe they can even lean a little bit more into its horror aspects this time around. We're hearing Resident Evil 4 Remake is kind of doing that. It's faithful, but they're still trying to make it a little bit scarier. So maybe they could do something like that with Dead Space 2 as well, but I'd say beyond Dead Space 2, that's where things get a little bit more murky. Dead Space 3 wasn't exactly universally praised, which is ultimately why we never got a Dead Space 4. So if they do remake the second game, I think that's fine, but after that, maybe then a brand new Dead Space game from top to bottom would start to make a lot more sense. Either which way, though, whether they remake Dead Space 2, reboot it, or just make Dead Space 4, I'll be happy with any of these scenarios. We just need more Dead Space. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.